Oh, beautiful. Oh, very beautiful.
Thank you.
So, everybody, hello. Cathy Segal-Garcia here. And my special guest today is Steve LaSpina. Great bass player. Hi, everybody. Hi, David, Joyce, Taylor. Hey, kids. Yeah. So Steve and I met in person in June when we did a gig together at the Deerhead Inn. And that was really fun. And you were so musically there, supportive for me. I was like, yeah. It was great. It was great to have you in my left ear.
Pleasure to be there. Yeah.
You've had a beautiful run, you know. And I don't want to say that you're over it. Somehow that sounds very like, okay, you've had a beautiful run. That's it.
It never stops. Yeah.
Right. So hi, Nora. But you know, with everybody, I start in different places because I just like to feel it out, you know. And sometimes I'll ask. I'm sure I'll get to where you grew up and everything, but I think I'm not going to start there. I think I'm going to ask you. There were a lot of great people that you played with for a bunch of years, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
Yeah. And I was thinking when I was just listening to you playing that I mean the whole band, by the way, that was just beautiful. Everybody was so good. Wow,
Yeah,
really beautiful.
it's a treat to record with
Yeah.
those guys.
Who are they again? I know Joel Fromm, I'm familiar with.
Joel Fromm on tenor. Luis Perdomo is the pianist. Eric McPherson is the drummer. And I've known Luis for a while, and Joel I've known a longer period of time. And Luis and I and Eric were doing some trio hits at Mesereau a few years back, and it was just so much fun. And Joel had been playing my brunch gig on and off, and I'm like, boy, I hadn't done a recording for Steeplechase in 10 years. And I said,
Wow.
I'm going to bug him and see if I can't get one more record out of him. And he liked the what I had proposed, and we went ahead and did it. So, and I
And
wrote that tune, and I think I wrote 3 tunes or 4 tunes for that record date. And then the rest of the music were some of my favorite tunes off of other records I've recorded, or CDs, or whatever you want to call it now,
yeah.
that I've done over the years. So that's kind of the whole premise of that record date, was to feature some of the older material that I've already recorded with other people with this band. So came out good.
Sounded great. When was that released?
Pandemic 2020, October. It was recorded December 2019.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he takes a while to release stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know Steeplechase was still putting out stuff.
Yeah, he's slowed down considerably. I mean, you know, the
Yeah.
whole iTunes and the way the digital market is, it's really put a crimp in everybody's catalogs. But
Yeah.
he's like re-releasing, I see, some of his older stuff. Because he was, I think it was Sunnyside, or there was another label that he was doing back in the 70s. I have quite a few records. Inner City, that's the name of it. It was Inner City Records in the 70s, and he released some really great stuff. Tate Montague and Niels Hennings. There were some great solo recordings from him. So he did
Oh,
quite a bit. He has
what is his name?
his name is Niels Winter.
Oh, okay. I don't
Denmark.
even know his name.
He also has a classical label too,
Oh,
and he lives in a castle. I
he
hear.
lives in a castle?
That's what I hear.
Yay. Castle,
Yeah,
releasing jazz and classical. Sounds good.
yeah, he's been right. He's a nice man. He's been right by me all these years. So I started
Yeah.
recording for him in '93, I think it was. So,
Oh,
and I've done probably 11 or 12, maybe more
wow.
of my own recordings with him.
Oh,
So it's been
awesome.
going on a while. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you spent time over there? How did you actually get together with him?
Um, I was doing some dates for him in the early '90s with different people, Andy Laverne, initially, and we did some trio hits, and they're really good. And I woke up one morning and said, I'm going to get a record deal with somebody, and I went out and recorded a demo tape and shopped it around and got a lot of no's. And then after doing a date for Niels, I said to him, I would like to play this for you and see if I can interest you in buying it. And, and he did, and off we went.
Uh, Was that in the
In
US?
New York, New York.
Okay.
I met him in New York. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
So everything was. I've been to Denmark a few times, but I've never met him or seen him there. It's
Oh,
always New York.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's just such a, we're all tied in so much, from everywhere on the planet.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
you
And
don't you
I
feel?
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I did get a record deal with Red Records before that, and that was with a cooperative group with Fred Hirsch and Jeff Hirschfield. And
Oh,
we were supposed to do 5 recordings for him, but he decided he didn't like the drum sound, and we came to do battle, shall I
oh,
say,
yeah.
and we did 2 recordings.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah,
Oh, um, we came to do now.
steeplechase. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, 'cause-
I was just gonna, I was just saying that I think I really got from this whole period of time in the last few years that it's been more and more apparent um, to everybody, including fans, that we're all tied in, and that music it's like the life and breath of us. You know,
Mhm.
it's not a because I think, especially being jazz players, you sometimes start thinking, for various reasons, that you're just like a little fish in this huge sea of life. But actually, we are the sea of life. So I just see that more and more. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very interesting to watch how the business has changed and where
Hmm.
it's at now. And honestly, I didn't expect it. I thought the demise was inevitable with the digital age, but it really is kind of flattened out, and we're kind of like, I think, at a new period where it's going on. It's still going on. It didn't
Yeah.
totally kill it.
No, it didn't. Or do you do you have do you have the capabilities of recording at home? Like if someone sends you stuff?
I've done some stuff at home. I do have, since the pandemic, I went out and bought microphones and was doing a lot of video Zoom lessons and things like that. And I do have the capability, but I haven't used it that much, to be honest.
Yeah.
I recorded a bass quartet I had written, and I did that all here at the house. I haven't done much with it yet, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice. I'm kind of, I just take my time. I never pressure myself with this stuff like this, but I am getting into getting a mic and a preamp and a baffle. And my friend is going to help me set it up so I can, because I think that, I mean, I've talked to so many people who have said, yeah, let's do something, and they're not here. So I just think that's kind of a real future, promising future of at least creating together, you know.
I had some of my students third movement of my, or it was fourth movement of my quartet. I had each of them do a part, set the metronome,
Oh,
and record their part, and then I put it all together.
hmm,
And that was fun. Those are
yeah.
things that I did during the pandemic to keep me from going crazy. 'Cause,
Yeah,
no,
I get it. Yeah.
I was having carport concerts in my carport in the condo I had. And the neighbors were all crazy, man. They're like, "Oh, this is great live music," and they would pass the hat, and everybody'd make a little money too. So it was really fun.
I kept wanting to do that, but it was so, I don't know, first, for the first few months or something, it was so hot, in my house, the way that the sun comes and, hits you if you're on the driveway. I'd have to put something over, or
Right.
who knows if the neighbors would even come or whatever. And then by the time the weather cooled down, I guess I just forgot about it.
Yeah, yeah, we were lucky. I think at one point we had almost 40 people sitting in
Oh,
the driveway in the street, and
wow.
people were eating food, and it was got to be a real hang. And
Wow.
everybody's so appreciative to be able to hear some live music. That was the other thing that was kind of nice. Even
Yeah.
if they were big jazz fans, they just really enjoyed hearing some live music. And I had different people came over. Louise came over and ran a fief, and we used to have a brunch gig together. So like we did a Sunday afternoon here, and it was a lot of fun. And like I said, people really appreciated hearing some live music through that period because it was so difficult for everyone. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And now it's kind of, you know,
Yeah,
medium
it's back,
difficult.
New
Yeah.
York's back to New York.
Is it?
People, yeah, it really is. There's lots of people out, and um, even in the stores here in Jersey and stuff, everything's pretty relaxed.
Yeah.
So much better.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, LA, I mean, I don't think the businesses are that uptight, although they're cautious, but the people are very, some people have masks, some don't.
Right?
Um, so I don't know. It's, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I have a few questions for you already. Hi, Mark. My friend Taylor is a good question asker, and he's a guitarist, Taylor Hatch, and he goes to University of Texas, North Texas,
Hmm.
and he said, "I know you've worked with so many different musicians. Can you talk about, of all the records or performances you've been a part of, which one, I'm going to say which ones myself, was most memorable to you, and which one gave you the biggest life lesson that has stuck with you?" He always asks very thinking, you have to think about his question.
Well, okay. So which recordings or performances?
I believe, well, he said records or performances.
Okay. Well, I would say there's a few of them. My first really big one, and where I learned a lot about business and people, was with Getz, and that was in the '80s. I toured a little bit. I toured like 6 months off and on with him, and I learned what it was like to have to perform on that level every night, and it was really a great challenge and a learning experience. Stan was very consistent. So were the
Huh.
other guys in the band, and yeah, that was a great lesson. And there's a couple of other people I've worked with. I learned a lot from actually working with Benny Carter, about being your own person
Oh,
and really holding fast to what you want and not letting somebody dictate to you otherwise. And Benny was in his, when I started working with him, he was in his late 80s. So he was great. I mean, that was some of the most fun I've ever had on a record day when we did the double record of all his music, and a bunch of different vocalists came in and recorded, and we kind of made the arrangements on the spot. And that was just really, that was an extra special experience for me personally. Then, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Jim Hall, who I worked with off and on for about almost 26, 27 years.
wow.
You know, I really learned so much from him musically,
Yeah.
composing melodies and improvising melodies, I would say. And then his gentleness, you know, on the music stand as a leader. And, you know, watching somebody like him deal with stuff that I thought that maybe somebody like Jim Hall wouldn't be dealing with it, but he was a human being like all of us, and there'd be nights he'd come off the bandstand and say, "Geez, I'm sorry, I just couldn't play tonight." And you're like, I don't know what he's talking about. There's nights when we all feel that way. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how high up on the ladder you are. That's a human thing. It's okay to feel that way, but you also have to know that on some level, your level is there, and even though you're feeling not so great about it, it's still a high level. And so many things with Jim, so many tours that I did with Jim, recording. You know, my favorite recording is These Rooms with Tom Harrell and Jim Hall Trio with Joey Barron and myself.
I'm writing that down. These rooms.
Yes, it's hard to find because it's on Denon. I don't think it's on iTunes, but it is on YouTube.
Okay.
And that was probably one of the most special recordings for me. What else? I don't know. You know, Fred Hirsch gave me a chance to get into the music recording world, and that was the trio thing that we did. And he also, I learned a lot from him, being persistent and really learning how to make things work for you, not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. Now you mentioned
Take no for an answer.
which leads me into the next question, because you said Benny Carter. The lesson you got with Benny Carter was basically do what you believe. Is that what you said?
Yep.
And is that musically or just in life?
I think it's both. It's both. So I had, you know, Benny wrote lyrics, he wrote the music, and I remember I said to him, I says, "Wow, Benny, I mean, your lyrics are great." I says, and he says, "Well, my wife and I at night before we go to bed, we read through the dictionary." And I'm like, "Well, that makes sense, you know. I need to do that too."
Wow.
Because I always felt my use of the vocabulary is very limited. And he got me doing that and got me reading a lot. I used to, you know, started reading books, massive amounts. And,
Wow.
and he also, like, you know, when we were doing that one record, somebody was trying to push him around about something, and he's like, "Ain't gonna happen." I remember I ended up in the men's room with him, and he's like, "People aren't gonna tell me what to do." He says, "I've been doing this for a long time, and nobody has a right to tell me, you know, what to do."
Huh.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
That's
He
so
was
cool.
Benny Carter, but he, you know, he knew what he wanted, you know,
Yeah.
and he would test you on the bandstand when we were doing the arrangements. I would keep my mouth shut. And, you know, like the piano player and Sherman Ferguson, I don't know if you knew Sherman,
Yeah, I did.
playing drums at the time.
Huh.
And they'd be talking about arrangements, and I just kind of sit back with the bass in front of me and try to stay out of it, you know. And there was one point where they were getting into an argument, not an argument, but a discussion about the intro for a tune. And Benny turns around and he looks at me, and I'm like, "Oh shit, what to do?" And he did. And I said, "Well, I says, honestly, this is what I would do. I'd keep it simple. And, he said, that's what we're doing. And I'm like, okay. I didn't feel qualified
Yeah.
to do that. And yet he felt I was. And he's like, you should speak up more because you have good ideas. And I'm like, okay, well, if Benny Carter says that, I'm going to do it.
That's great. I've always felt an affinity towards him, and maybe it's because of his music and his lyrics and stuff, and his playing. I mean, I don't even know if I saw him live. I may have seen him live once, but yeah, I always felt this warmth towards him. So it's nice to hear that.
It was an amazing person, and
Yeah.
full of so much humanity. And I always had such a great time working with him and traveling with him. And I was always like, I think the last tour we did was in Germany, and he was 92 years old. And I'm like, wow. I mean, even Jim was like in his 80s in some of the last tours we did. And I'm like, I can't imagine. These guys are so strong, night after night. So,
It's amazing. One time I took down, what was it? Something like, it was a standard. I can't quite remember what song it was, but from the record of him, Jim Hall and Bill Evans. And it was, listening to their solos was great, but when I wrote them down, I kind of got blown away because I don't know, it's, whatever it turned into in my mind, I guess, made it more personal, right? And I just realized I would never think of going there. Never think of going there, And I mean, I had new respect again for them. They're so beautiful. It's kind of like Ella at her heyday. She was so fabulous, but her fabulousness was subtle. It wasn't like slamming in your face. It was subtle, and so a lot of people just thought she was a great pop singer.
yeah, well, I used to say when Jim would play a blues lick, it was a very polite blues lick, but it was always like down, man, right down in it. But it was always had an element of politeness. That's, and he played great blues lick. Nobody
That's
played it.
funny.
Yeah. And I also think, like, when talking about these people, a lot of who they are comes out in the music they make.
Yeah.
It really, it really shows what they're about. I believe. You know.
You always hear about, people who are assholes being able to come up with something beautiful.
Right.
But that's probably the small minority, right?
Yeah. I mean, somebody said to me once when I was on tour with Stan, he would play Blood Count. That was how he would end a lot of the shows, and people would be tearing up. I mean, it was just so
Huh.
incredible. I mean, just like I could get goosebumps just thinking about it. And somebody said to me, "It's really amazing because Stan can be such and yet he can play touch your heart like that." And I'm like, well, it's true. It's true. I mean, I never had any problems with him when we were on the road, but some other people did. It just he had a lot of issues, I guess.
Yeah.
We all have issues, but some issues come to the forefront more than other issues, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and sometimes certain relationships flip up the switch,
True.
and you don't know what it is. I mean, I learned that with my ex-husband, the switch gets turned on and
Yeah, yeah.
you're not doing anything terrible. It's just
Who
who you
knows?
are. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, people on here have heard me say this before, but I grew up, my dad was a sax player and my mom had been a singer, and my two older sisters sang, one played piano, so we always were doing that. But uh, so the first group that I actually like wanted to go and hear myself, and I must have been too young to, I don't know what, drink or drive or something, because my sister came with me, and we went to the jazz workshop in Boston and we saw the Modern Jazz Quartet. And the music was so in that zone, perfect. It was in the zone, high level quality from the beginning to the end. They were dressed beautifully. They had respect for each other and the audience. And I was that whole thing was such an imprint for me. And just I loved that. It was the whole thing. I loved it. And that's like I think of Benny Carter like that, and who's the pianist, also from a musical family. Uh, I don't know why I always forget his name. The fabulous black pianist, extremely elegant. It's on the tip of my tongue. And his brothers were all musical. Um,
Hank Jones.
Hank Jones, thank you. Hank Jones, I mean, talk about friggin' elegance.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, just gorgeous. Sometimes, and really sometimes for me, sometimes piano players don't stand out that much. I mean, they're good players, but their personality doesn't like really, their whole musical personality doesn't sit up here for me. But like Hank Jones, I could listen to and totally be in heaven.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that.
So, okay, so did you grow up in New York? You have a New York accent, right?
No, I don't know if I do or not.
Or is it New Jersey or Rhode Island or something?
No, I grew up in Chicago, although I've been
Oh,
on the East
Chicago.
Coast for 40 years.
So it's a Chicago accent. Okay. I'm not good with the Chicago accent. I don't know why, but okay. I always think it's East Coast. So you grew up in Chicago.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I left Chicago in '79 and I moved here,
Yeah.
but grew up in Chicago.
Why didn't you stay in Chicago? It was pretty musical, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of great musicians and I got to play with a lot of people, but I wasn't happy there.
Mm.
I, I, um, I was playing a lot of electric bass. The jazz people really wouldn't hire me to like work at the showcase, um, and I wanted to play more upright bass. I was really tired of playing electric, and I started working with Marion McPartland like in '77, I think, and then I did a couple of gigs with Chet Baker in '78. I'm just like, and then different piano players because I was working at like kind of a show lounge. Um, People like Mel Torme and different people would come in every week, and I had like the house job. And everybody told me you really should be in New York.
Oh,
Everybody would say. And then I started working with I got there was another jazz club, Rick's Cafe American, where they would hire me. And people I was working with there would like, you should move to New York. And Barney Kessel was in one week, and I've said to Barney, I'm like, I'm really kind of torn about if I should go to LA or New York. I'm not going to stay in Chicago. And he says, come on out. You're coming out with me tonight after the gig. So we finished the gig. I put my bass in his room and we went out to the Oak Street Diner on Rush Street in Oak and met Ray Brown, Jellyman, and
oh,
Bud Shank.
oh, wow.
So here I'm having breakfast with these guys. I called my dad. My dad was a bass player too, and I
Oh,
called up and woke him up. He says, What's the matter? What's the matter?" I said, "I just want to let you know I'm having a meal with Ray Brown and Shelly Man and Bud Shank and
oh my
Barney Kessel."
God.
He's like, "I'll be right down. Just don't you dare."
Oh my
Well,
God.
they were actually the guys that talked me into going to New York.
Yeah, that would be successful, I think.
You really should go to New York. I'd spent some time in LA, and I liked the musicians, and I don't know. New York had always spoken to me. Even before I was a musician, I wanted to move to New York, the
Oh,
East Coast. I don't know why. I
yeah.
figured it's got mountains, it's got the ocean. and it's New York.
Yeah.
So I ended up, Marion offered me the gig full time.
Oh.
Uh,
Was she on the
she heard I
road
was working.
or was she on
I'd
the,
worked with her in the Midwest, and
okay.
she called me up. It was a quick story. New Year's Eve that year, my wife and I decided we were taking one last big vacation because I was making a lot of money in Chicago. And just as we're walking out the door, I hear the phone machine go off, and I hear it's Marion. So I run back in, and she says, "Are you moving to New York?" I says, "Yeah, I'm planning to move April 1st." She says, "Well, I need a bass player. You want the gig?" And I'm like, "Well, of course, you know." So that was it, And there I went on April 1st.
Oh
So,
my God.
and
So
everything worked out.
was that a steady gig at a hotel or something or?
No, it was just whatever work she had. And she had three, and it worked out like unbelievable because she had 3 weeks at Michael's Pub, the last week of February, first 2 weeks of March. So I did that job and I found an apartment and she helped me, with the credit and all that. And I went back to Chicago and I was getting 3 to 4 jingles a week and I was working every night and everybody's like, "You shouldn't move to New York." And I'm like, "No, I'm moving to New York," and moved into my apartment April 1st. And that night I subbed on the Mel Lewis big band.
Oh my God.
So everything just like New York, it had to be New York. And it was
Yeah.
just timing was right.
Boy, that night your mind must have been a little blown, huh?
Oh, I was time for moving, and yet they Jim McNeely was playing piano, and he saw me bringing back the U-Haul truck, and he called me up. He says, "Hey, we need a bass player tonight. Tonight, do you feel like it?" I said, "You kidding? Of course."
And
So that was my
then you're playing and you're going, "Oh my God.
yeah, yeah,
I'm here doing this."
yeah. It was an experience, great experience. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was New York. Just kind of changed everything for me.
Yeah.
The timing was right. Everything clicked. So
I'm just
yeah,
curious, you mentioned when you were in New York playing with somebody, did you know Bradley Young at that time, the piano
I
player?
didn't know, but I worked with him. He came into New York 3 or 4 years ago, and I did something with him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did. He did like a tribute to Chet Baker.
Oh,
Randy,
I thought you might have worked with Chet Baker
I
together.
did. I did work with Chet, but
Yeah,
not with
not
Brad.
together. Yeah, yeah. He passed.
Bradley?
Yeah.
Are you kidding? I didn't know that. Oh my God.
No, it was about, I'm gonna say a year and a half ago.
My
It
word.
was he had diabetes and he didn't get any vaccinations and it was COVID actually.
Oh wow. So
Yeah.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me too. He was such a nice person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my. I
yeah,
had no idea.
yep.
Mm.
Um, well, Joyce Glasgow says hello, and she said you're sounding great. And Taylor would like to know about your pedagogy. Um, and what was the most influential thing a teacher gave you that you apply to your students? I don't know if I think like that. I'm trying to think of that question. I know what I teach with, but I don't
Right.
know that I got it from anybody else. Did you have some stuff like that?
Well, I have to say, when I was in Chicago, I was studying to be a classical bassist, and I was studying with Warren Benfield, and he was an exceptional teacher. He recognized my problems, my life problems, my personal problems, and that were hanging me up. And I sometimes I find students that have those kind of problems, and I preach a lot about being focused. The same kind of focus he talked to me about, having life plans and what you're going to do and where you want to be. And I think I do that. I do that quite a bit with my students. Also singing, as
Oh,
far as music stuff. Um, I make everybody sing what they play. And I think singing is one of the best things you can teach somebody. So I don't know how much pedagogy that would fall under, but that's,
Well, I mean, yeah, those are similar to what like the things that I teach are not necessarily certain scale to learn or that kind of thing, but it's more about things like that, focus, and for singers too, especially because we're out in the front, we have the lyrics, that adds in to the mix. That's, you know, there's other things to think about. Like when if I'm in a session with somebody and I'm the producing or whatever I'm doing, and the engineer is musical and a good accompanist, for instance, then they can tell the singer great things, but not like I can tell them the same stuff,
right.
because I'm a singer and I know how a singer thinks. So yeah.
I think, I also, one of my things is practicing for technique and practicing for music. And that was something that I got also from Warren Benfield.
Uh,
And, and I think that's important too, because if you don't, you build the technique to create the music. And then when you're creating the music, you shouldn't be thinking about technique.
right. I really like that. You build. I'm writing that down because that's an aha moment. But by the time I get to listen back to this one, it's going to be 3 years. You build technique from the music. Is that what you said?
Well, you build technique to perform the music.
To perform the music,
And,
yeah.
and then when you're making the music, you shouldn't be thinking about technique.
Right.
So, like for my bass students, they should know the fingerboard up, sideways, up and down, sideways, and it should be something that they don't have to think about.
Yeah.
You need to make the instrument an extension of you, so that when you are creating, you're not thinking about, oh, well, how am I going to finger that? What string am I going to play it on? And so it's more, and that's the other, and then that brings me to the singing part of it, because when you're singing and playing, you can't think about the technique as much. So it kind of shuts off the chatter in your brain.
Yeah.
Like, okay, here comes a C altered 7. What am I going to play? No, that ain't going to happen if you're singing. you know.
So being that you do a lot of reading, have you read The Inner Game of Music by Barry?
Yes, I have. I teach a master class for second year grad students, and that's one of my books that I use.
It's a great
Yeah,
book, isn't it?
yeah, and everybody so far everybody's enjoyed it. I've been teaching it about 7 years now, and everybody's like, "Wow, that's some really good stuff to digest and have at your fingertips." Yeah, it
Especially
makes a
nice.
lot.
Yeah, and it's especially nice. He's a bass player.
Right, right, exactly,
Right? Yeah.
exactly. I think, yeah, I'm gun ho on that. That's part of the things that I teach in this class. I also teach people for performance skills, that they're leading a group and they need to work on their chatter, introducing songs, introducing the band, keeping it interesting so that you're drawing people into your conversation when you're on the stage. That's something that I think a lot of instrumentalists don't always think about.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to your performing. I talk about being on the road for a month and how do you cope with that, things like that. And then I also make them fake tunes without the music. Just get up, we're going to play this tune, figure it out in real time. you know. And I also make everybody take turns trying to play time on the bass and playing time on the drums. Because I think once you experience that, if you're not a rhythm section player, to experience what it's like to keep the beat in that, even if you're not playing the notes, just to keep the beat. So I'm trying to make it as much fun as possible.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And it's some years it's great. This year I'm only going to have 3 students.
Oh,
Last year I only had 1,
oh
but
my gosh.
yeah, I think it's an important thing for college graduates. I also make them write out a 10-year plan. Where do they want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Who do you
Well,
want to play
that
with? What
Yeah,
do you
that
want
was from that book, right?
to?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, other things too, but that specifically, because I actually did that, from the book. Yeah, and interesting, because I haven't really thought about that, but I can see for students especially, you know, to put it in your mind, and to be
Yeah.
working towards that. Yeah.
When I moved to New York, I wanted to play with Bill Evans, and I came that close. Bill knew me, and he told me if Mark ever left, he would consider hiring me. He'd heard me play a lot, and then when
Yeah.
he passed away, I went into a deep depression. I'm like, that's the only job I ever really wanted. And then I just started expanding, and I got a gig with Jim Hall, which is a real nice. It's up there too, and with all the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people I got. But I always, and when one thing ended, I'd always say, okay, what's next?
yeah.
What else am I, you know? And
You
I
know,
studied.
uh, along those lines, it's not always the bad things that put you into a funk, right? So I made a record pretty relatively early with Mark Johnson and Peter Erskine and this pianist from that I had met in Japan, Philip Strange. And it was such an incredible experience. And afterwards, I went into a depression for about a year because I know why, because I couldn't play with them normally. And so at around a year later, an artist friend of mine, and I wish I remembered what he said, but he said one sentence that made me realize that I hadn't created a new game yet, you know? And that was it. That he said that, and then I was like, oh. And then, like you say, the next and the next and the next. It's really important.
Very much so. I mean, I'm going to be 60. I'm 68 years old, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, so what am I? The things change. Most of the people I work for aren't around anymore, and how am I? What's next? What's the next chapter? And what do I want to do? And I need to, focus my energy on trying to get there. Figure out what's next. So I think it's really important for all of us to have that,
Yeah.
and that's one of the beautiful things about being an artist. There's always more things to create. You know.
And I'm really big on how a lesson in life it applies to everything else. So that
Sure.
particular thing is, I mean, first of all, playing music, especially jazz, you have to think what's coming. You can't stop and you can't think back and you can't go, oh God, that was terrible. You can't do any of that. You have to keep moving. And life is like that too. If you have to keep moving. So that applies to a lot of different things, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me personally, I've been teaching a long time, but I've been at William Patterson 20. I think it's 22 years this year.
Oh, wow.
I get a lot of inspiration from my students too.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it kind of rejuvenates stuff. And you see the excitement and what's in their eyes, and you remember, yeah, um, it's it has to be for you what you're
Yeah.
doing. It has to be for you. It can't be for everything else. Or am I going to get a downbeat critical?
Yeah.
Or am I going to get a record deal with Luna? It's not. The most important thing is what are you doing for you, and where do you want to be, and what do you want to keep doing, and finding a certain peace with all of that. I'm working on it. I keep, I just composed a piece for cello and piano, and that was premiered last month. And that was like
Oh,
a great. I've been working on it since January, and I've never gone to a premiere of something I've written, and it was a great experience. And then, like you said, okay, now it's done. Now what? I'm
wow.
gonna write some more music. You know.
That's exciting.
Yeah, well, to get it played, I've written a lot of stuff, but I've never actually
Yeah.
had it played like that. So it's always something to look forward to. And I think about Benny Carter. He was, and Jim. They kept going.
Yeah. Do you know David Amram?
I don't think we've ever met. I know his name. Yes.
In June, I saw him actually. We had dinner, and the guy is 92. He's adorable. He's so alive. He's
Yeah.
so, he's funny. He's fun. He's enjoying life. He has like 12 things on his plate every day. You know. Yeah,
That's where I want to get there too.
me too. Me too, man. I want to do that. Let's see. Well, we're going to take another Taylor question.
All right.
Mm. Taylor, now this question, I haven't heard you ask this before. What was the funniest gig you ever experienced?
Oh, geez. Funniest gig. Oh God, I don't know. Where the weirdest thing happened, or what funny how?
Yeah, you could go there.
I was, I was working, and I'm not going to name the pianist, but I was working with this pianist. He's a very accomplished pianist, and we got on this gig, and it was really terrible. The singer, the singer was beyond. He should never have considered himself a singer. He was trying to sing Frank Sinatra songs, and
What did you say,
piano
Frank
player and I,
Sinatra? Is that what you said?
yeah, he was trying to sing Sinatra songs, and it just wasn't anywhere
Okay.
near. And the piano player says to me, he says, "I don't think I can take much more of this." And I says, "Yeah, I'm me too. I'm really thinking on the break, I'm packing up the bass and going home." And he says, "I'm not ready yet." He grabbed his bag and walked out the door, the fire door in the middle of the tune, and left me hanging.
Oh, oh man.
The singer's like, "Well, you can keep playing." I says, "No, it's not going to work." But that was like really strange. I mean, I couldn't believe he did that. I really respected him for doing it, but I wish he had waited till I could join him. You know, um, funny. I don't know. That was funny because it was just so off the wall. I don't know what other funny gigs I would talk about. Oh, somebody hired me once to play a cocktail hour, right? And Elliot Zigman was on it. And I show up to do the cocktail hour, and it's just Elliot Zigman and I.
Ah,
And I called up the woman that booked me. I says, "Hey, is there a piano player or guitar player coming?" And she's like, "No, it's cocktail music. Nobody cares about anything else. Just play bass lines and drum lines."
okay.
Luckily, I brought the electric bass, and I played some melodies, and we finished the gig and went home. But
That's
it was that,
funny.
yeah,
What a concept. Like instead of having piano and bass.
right, bass and drums. So, I mean, there's been funny moments on gigs, but I think that's the funniest. Um, we had an experience with Jim, we were in Sapporo, and they had these. It first started with the digital radios that would play all kinds of stuff, and there was Terry Clark and I and Larry Goldings was on it, and we were talking about I had turned on the sounds of the waves, the ocean and stuff, and uh, I was telling Jim, I says, I think I was getting seasick, and he's laughing and everything, and we're talking more about it. And the next, the next day, we're having Jim's room. Jim had his own room, but it was a half wall, and he had the door closed. And we're talking about the ocean sounds again, and Jim starts lobbing whole fish over the half wall at us.
Oh my God.
That was fun. It's fish. And he's like the guy, the Japanese guy that took him out to get the fish couldn't figure out why he wanted to get so many fish. Then we saw him throwing him over the wall. Tim was a practical joker. He had a great sense of humor too.
I guess he was, man.
Yeah, I mean that was pretty funny.
That's
I'll never.
funny.
you know. So other than that, I don't know what comes to mind, but that was pretty fun.
Oh, that's pretty funny. That's up there.
Yeah.
I wrote a song about Jim Hall. I'm going to send you it. I recorded it twice, and I sent it to him too, but I never really heard from him about it. But I think it's a cool tune. I wrote it many years ago. I was I was writing, in those closets that are under stairs, I
Yeah.
have this closet that I I would go in and write because that was the only extra room. But it turned out great. I saw him and I can't remember their names, but they're Canadian, the bass player and the
John
drummer.
Thompson and Terry Clark.
Yeah. And and so the drummer is Terry Clark, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes.
He had a broken arm in a cast.
Yeah, he talked about that a lot.
He did.
Yeah, I heard a lot about
It was so divine, that gig, and I went home and I wrote this song, and it's pretty cool tune. I'll send it to you.
it. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to see it. Terry and Jim talked about that episode a lot. So,
I think we should hear you play some more. Me, I am looking for. Oh, here we are. Let's see. I had a little bit of trouble, ladies and gentlemen, with my sound this morning. So if
Hey folks, Chris Vandeviver here from WhyLogicProRules.com, the website that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro 10.
I didn't mean to
Today,
do that.
I want to do a brief walkthrough of flex pitch and some
Flex pitch. Oh, shoot. Okay. I was looking around and that's what happened. Steve LaSpina. And so I'll share with you my screen so you can see me looking. We heard the top one, A Change in the Weather. Any of these jump out at you? Like these?
those are promotional videos. The Jim Hall, All the Things You Are. That whole concert. That was a concert that we did after Jim had been in the hospital for 3 months, and that was like his big return.
Oh, okay.
You know, it was at the
Let's hear this one. From Joey Barron. No, beautiful.
Yeah, that was a great day. That really was. Jim was back in his great fashion. You know, he really played great. And you know, it's funny, is he had to walk out with a cane.
Oh,
And he had his doorman in his building put LED lights in the cane.
oh.
When he came out, he was flashing everybody with the lights. It was great. It was really something.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
And
was listening to you, and I mean, I was, I remember my feeling about how you were playing for me when we were playing, and Mark Copeland is a very ethereal kind of player, right? And I feel like if he and I played together more, then there would be a more of a marrying. But in that particular situation, having you there, you were really solid for me. You were giving me some real presence that I could hook into. And I was wondering if you play differently for singers, even if they're jazz singers, who have been experienced, you know.
I I really enjoy playing with good singers. And I started, the first singer I ever played with was Sylvia Sims, of all people,
Wow.
with a trio in Chicago. And, you know, she was some jazzy, you know, but I really understood what I need to give to a singer. You know, I and maybe because I sing so much, I understand that. And I always try to play the gig. I'm there to accompany somebody. My first role is to lay down the harmony and the time and make it very clear. And only after a while, you know, when I get more familiar, I might loosen that up a little bit. But I really believe in taking care of business. That's the function of the bass.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate to work with a lot of singers over the years, record with quite a few of them. And I enjoy it. I love sitting on the bottom of the harmony there, you know, it just really making it swing, you know, it's just, that's what the bass is supposed to do, you know,
Yeah.
and I really enjoy it. So, and then us getting a chance to work together, you were so easy to work with. I mean, I knew exactly what you needed, and it was great being so close that I could really hear you. And yeah, I mean, I what can I say? I mean, I enjoy. I think that's really where the bass is in the
Yeah.
situation.
I have a friend who his ears are very big. Bass is not his primary focus in life. And when he plays, God bless him, but he doesn't, he's like, uh, I think he listened to great bass players, but he's a little more like you were very melodic with Jim there. You were, you weren't just going bum, 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 right? There was kind of a melody in what you were doing. And I think this friend of mine wants to do that, but he's missing the the primary function of the bass. And so a lot of times, like the notes that he's playing, I don't know what chord he's even thinking of. It's like, where is that note? I don't even know. And your job is to lay the bass down. This is a trio or a quartet with a singer. You better get in there and lay it down.
Yeah, I mean, there's what I call a conversational two, which is sort of like what LaFaro was doing with Bill Evans,
Mhm.
and you know, working with all the people I've worked with, there's times when I can step away from it, but there's also time. It's very important because even a piano player or guitar is counting on me to play that note, to play the root. So everything that they're building off of it is
Yeah.
there. of
Yeah.
substance. And it's the same thing when you're working with a vocalist. I mean, you really need to lay it out. And that being said, there's ways to lay it out where you don't necessarily have to play the root, but you have to outline that chord so that it sounds, you're hearing the chord change. So
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe from doing it so many years, but I have my, I don't think it's just my own stuff, but I have my ways of playing behind somebody where I think I can really spell out the chord, not always having to hit the root. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But I make sure that I keep it within reason, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you transcribe a lot of Ron Carter's, he really created a really explaining the harmony in different ways, you know, the
Yeah.
way he walks through a chord. So it's there's a lot there, but you know, I made my bread and butter when I wasn't playing with Jim and people like that, working with singers in New York. I played with a lot of cabaret singers, did a lot of recording with them. Well, so you know, I've had a lot of different experiences, and I think that all comes into the mix, you know, of being able to really understand what your role is and what you need to accomplish before anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. I'm just I'm just curious, do you feel that you would, like when you're playing with a singer, do you feel that you would rather hear the singer lay out the melody at least first, or does it matter? I was just listening to beautiful Emmett Cohen and Veronica Swift, you know,
Uh,
one of actually Emmett wasn't playing, it was another guy, but it was his house concert thing, you know, that he's been doing. And Veronica didn't lay out the melody at all. I mean, she referred to the melody. She's a great singer. And I was fine with it. But, of course it brings up, you know, I can't tell you how many people I've heard that say, lay out the melody first, and and of course it doesn't mean you have to read exactly what's on the page. You can fool around with the phrasing and the rhythm and stuff. But what's your feeling on that?
the only time that it becomes a concern for me is if I'm faking, if I don't know the tune,
Okay.
to learn the tune.
Yeah.
If this happens quite a bit with some vocalists that aren't singing the right notes, you
Yeah.
know, and that really messes me up because I can find it if they're singing the right note.
Yeah.
Generally, I can find it, yeah, especially if it's a tune I've heard.
Yeah.
But if I know the tune, go wherever you want with it.
Yeah.
You know, I'll
Yeah.
follow you. Yeah, but I mean, it to me, the only time I get particular about it is if I'm kind of feeling my way through a tune without a chart. And
Yeah.
it's the only time. But
Or maybe
otherwise, I'm okay.
maybe if it's a somebody's original that you don't know either, even if you do have a chart, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, if I have a chart, yeah, I mean, you can take some liberties, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's never been a problem. The only time it's been a problem for me is if I don't know the tune and they're singing the wrong
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah.
Then it's the blind leading the deaf. Nothing happens. It just doesn't work.
The blind leading the deaf. Another Taylor question. He said, I haven't heard this name before, Taylor. Lage Lund told me
Yeah.
in a master class about Charlie Hayden and how when he closed his eyes, he was able to be so connected to the music as a whole without distraction. How do you balance learning a tune and how you memorize it?
Okay. For me, when I'm learning a tune, I have to learn the melody first. And if I don't know the melody, then I'm not going to learn the tune properly. And I think that's my process. Is usually I'll learn the melody and then I'll sing it while I play the bass notes or the chords, and
Yeah.
that's what puts it together for me. A lot of times I'll learn tunes on the piano first and then go to the bass.
Yeah.
But I've always found it easier if you have the melody. It's like remembering an equation without anything to stick to it. You know, numbers are numbers, but you know, I got to have some reference point, and that's why singing the melody is so important, playing the melody correctly. If I'm trying to find the changes, you know, I gotta. It's just how it works for me.
Yeah.
That's my process.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm singing a song with Brent Fisher's big band, Claire Fisher's son, and I'm singing it at the end of the week. And I just went this morning to run through it with the big band, and it's a song I didn't know before, Gaviota. I don't know if you know that song. It's very pretty, very simple actually, and I thought I pretty much knew it. I mean, I knew that I was going to have to get into it a little bit more, but yeah, and there was particularly, well, first of all, I was there and I was kind of running through it myself, and I realized, oh, interesting. So there's part of the melody that I'm going up and it's going down. So I have to get that together. And then there was I have to look at the music. I'm really curious because the first time through the song, there was this one little section that I came in too early on the next line. But at the end of the song, when I thought, okay, I'm not coming in early, that was actually the place to come in. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to go look at the music and study that particular thing. And I mean, sometimes it's just the chords somebody's playing, or maybe the big band arrangement has something in there that is making me feel it a certain way, you know. But yeah, it's really good to really, really have it soak in there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, generally when I make a mistake, if I'm faking a tune or somebody calls a tune I haven't played in a while, wrong melody, you know, takes me to the wrong place, you know. And I don't know. I always blame my lack of memory on getting older, but it's not that.
I wish we could just do that.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, but did you ever notice some days are better than others?
Oh, absolutely. And when I can't remember anything, my line is, I have Jazzheimer's.
Oh.
Oh, Jazzheimer. Too many bebop tunes. Ruined my
Oh, thank you, Roland. He said Jim Hall, that's my song I wrote, is one of my most favorite tunes that you've written. Thanks. I like that song. It's good. Oh, today is Oscar Peterson's birthday, and his new tribute Canadian coin is out.
Wow.
Taylor's asking about motivation, which I think is cool. And he was the guy. He's quoting the guy Malcolm Gladwell from Outliers. Did you read that one? That's
No, I haven't.
very interesting book. He said, hard work is only a prison sentence when you lack motivation. So he wants to know how you shape your motivation when you feel stuck. But maybe we answered that before about keep moving. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Motivation when I was younger was very easy. Sometimes since the pandemic, motivation sometimes is a little more difficult for me to get to. Yes, I want to keep moving, but I don't know. I mean, I find it's like anything else. It's like exercising or dieting or whatever. Looking at it can seem like it's more than what I can handle, but I understand that once I get into it, I'm into it. And I just need to cross that boundary
Yeah.
and get into it. It's like practicing, you know, I have a couple bases and I always leave one without a case on. So that when I walk by it, I'll grab it and I'll start playing, and usually that will motivate me. All right, let's take out the Bach cello suites, or let's do this. And same thing with the piano. I'm really focusing. I'm very motivated to learn more piano. I wish I'd done that earlier, but yeah, there's plenty of things to be motivated about.
Yeah.
Just crossing that line. Sometimes I'd rather sit on the couch and read a book, but yeah. But music It's still where I live, so.
Oh, it sounds like you've read a lot of books. Um, we'll have to share our list, you know. I'm
Yeah.
curious. I'm curious to know. I think some of my favorite books are like the Inner Game of Music. You know, I have like 25 years ago, I not only, of course, discovered Effortless Mastery, but I discovered Free Play. Have you written that?
Yeah, I've
Read
heard.
that? So
Yeah.
Free Play, and then interestingly enough, 25 years later, they both wrote another book.
Yeah, I
So
know.
Stephen wrote The Art of Is, and Kenny wrote Being the Instrument, which I think it's a great book.
I
And
haven't read.
oh, it's really good. It's a great expansion from the other book. Yeah,
I've been
really like
I've
that.
gotten into more philosophy kind of books. Eckhart, I can't think of his last name now.
Tolle.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle.
I'm in love with Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, I've read one of his books and I listened to his podcast.
Me too.
And my daughter recently gave birth. I have a grandson, and they
Mm.
live in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I drive down once a month to visit with them, and I always get an audio book. And lately, I've been um, what was it? They just made a movie of it. The Crawdads. I got to look at my audiobooks, but I've been getting into these, like, they're not, they're fiction, but like just something to escape from, not thinking about music, not thinking about philosophy, just some good old like escapism. And I've
Yeah.
been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it. The book that Hillary Clinton, and I can't think of the woman's name, I got into her books.
Oh,
So it's I've been reading a lot of different stuff than what I normally read. And I'm not reading audiobooks, I should say, because
yeah.
it's a great way to spend 10 hours when you're driving.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you happen to listen to or read Michelle Obama's book?
No, my wife has it. She just finished it, so well, that's next.
Apparently, it's really nice to listen to it.
Oh, I'm
My
sure.
nieces did that, and I read it, and I thought it was great. Um,
Oh, and Daniel De Silva, that was the one I just finished a couple of his books. Yeah, and they've really been fun
yeah,
to like escape.
yeah,
You know, I just need to escape sometimes. I think, especially after the whole pandemic thing, just like really just knocked the bejesus out of me, and I'm sure it did a lot of other people.
yeah.
You know, it's
Well,
just
I mean, literally in March, like I think the next weekend that the lockdown happened in March, I started this.
uh-huh. Oh, great.
And yeah, and I jumped into 6 days a week and for
Oh,
9 months. And then I went down. At that point, I thought, okay, I've done the 6 day a week thing, and I think I'm gonna, go down. And first I thought about 4 days, and then I thought, no, 3 days, and then I can do, my other stuff. And then and put up archives. So but it's really nice. It's I mean, at this point, in the beginning, the first 9 months, I mean, I had 1,000 people watching. I mean, people were dying for something, and it was
yeah.
inspirational, and it happened every day at the same time, and yeah. So
Cool.
yeah, but
Great.
yeah, there was a lot of things that happened. Oh, I was going to bring up Elizabeth Gilbert. She was the one who wrote Eat, Pray, and Love.
Hmm.
She's a good writer. It's like really user friendly,
Uh,
you can, and she wrote this book called Big Magic after Eat, Pray, and Love. And, one of the things that she brought up was Eat, Pray, and Love was so successful and it became a movie. And then people were like, well, why are you continuing to write? Like that was it. That was the pinnacle of life. And she said, first of all, so she said when she was younger and she fell in love with writing, she made a commitment at that time to write every day. And that's what she did. And that was interesting because she said what she discovered was when she'd start a new project, she was really in love with it at first, and then like a few days into it, she'd feel like, what am I doing this for? I really don't like it. But because she had committed to writing the next day she felt different. She felt excited again. So she realized that that was her process every time, and which obviously was valuable. But also there's a quote that I like to say, which is curiosity is creativity. I just love that, man. If you can talk about inspiration, right? If you're just curious, what you do every day you're curious, and that little curiosity, that's actually creativity. So that's pretty cool too, it's small.
I have ideas all the time, things I hear. Last night when I was trying to fall asleep, I was thinking of a tune, and I'm like, let's go down. I go downstairs and write it out. And then I said, if I do that, I'm not going to get any sleep, because once I start that, then it just keeps going, The cello suite was like 10 hours a day, like every day for like a week. And then I'm like, okay, I got to take a break.
Right.
But I really want to write more, and I want to write more contemporary classical music and some more jazz stuff. But the whole contemporary classical thing has kind of got my curiosity that, I'm hearing a lot of things in my head.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be young to write, so I'm going to keep
yeah, I know the writing thing. I think I write better on the acoustic piano, and my husband has kind of taken over that music room. I have my electric piano, but I'm not as inclined on the electric piano. I like the feeling of putting my hands on the acoustic instrument.
You can't duplicate it. I have my piano, and then I have my computer, and then I have my MIDI keyboard. I'll write it out by hand, and then I put it into Finale to see if what I'm writing is exactly what I'm hearing, because I don't play piano well enough at certain tempos to know if I got it right. So.
Yeah, that's a whole thing too. I actually did last year. I took a piano class with a great pianist, Jeremy Siskind. Do you know him?
No, I don't.
He lived in New York for a while. He was actually a student of Fred's, and he's one of those genius players. He's just brilliant. And anyway, he's a really good teacher too. He teaches for a college out here. And what I found was interesting. I play arranger's piano, or like accompaniment piano. I'm not terrible, but I'm not any, play the root, and and I'll play the chords in my right hand, and and maybe an intro, maybe an outro, and but playing the chord in my left hand and changing to voicings, and oh my God, that was really retarded.
Just the opposite. I can do my chords with my right hand, but if I'm trying to do chords with my left hand and bass, yeah. I mean, that's one of my things. I'd love to like study classical piano.
Really?
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Well,
not so much jazz, but classical.
Okay, no time like the present. Maybe you finished writing that piece. Maybe now is the time.
It's possible. Although school starts this week, and that's going to be it.
How much does school take up? How much time does it take up?
Well, I do Mondays and Tuesdays, and then I teach at a private school on Saturdays. So, and then there's like, other things that go on. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday seem to be eaten up right away with all kinds of other things. So, doctor's appointments and
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But I should do it, and it's on my list, and
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
I will.
The thing about piano, especially, I think, it's with every instrument, but I always think piano is like you have to absolutely practice every day to move ahead. Probably every instrument if you're just at the beginning of it, you know. I actually played flute when I was younger. I went to Berkeley for flute, but I didn't really continue because for some reason, I thought singing, you know, was only the only thing I could do. And I did at the beginning of the pandemic. I took some lessons, which I liked a lot, but you have to practice. You have to practice every day a little bit, you know, and what can I say? You know, just too many things, you know, to do.
Yeah, well, that's exactly how I feel. And you know, the other day I spent an hour on the bass and 2 hours on the piano. So
Oh,
you know, it happens. It happens, but not
oh,
it's not consistent. You know,
yeah,
depends on what gigs. I had a lot of gigs where I needed to learn some tunes, so I sit
yeah,
down and and kind of get familiar with the harmony
yeah.
and you know, original tunes sometimes can be, you know, what the hell are they writing? Let me look at that chord and see what is this really? What am I hearing? You know, it's what are you hearing? That's
Yeah,
so important.
yeah. I was very impressed with a student of mine um, this week. Gorgeous voice. He came to me. He was already a singer. He had sung classical and gospel, but he hadn't really gotten into jazz. So he wanted to, you know, get into understand what jazz was about. But so he started. I've watched him over the years. I must have known him at least 7 years now. So he started writing material, and the chords were unusual and you know not super comfortable in your ear. And so anyway, he you know just kept doing it and doing it, and so in the last year, I guess, or a year and a half, he gave the songs to a really great pianist here and had him flush out the chords, you know, that would work. And so my student, he started writing horn charts because he heard stuff in his head, right? 4 horns he started writing, and he was not, you know, it wasn't like he had gone to school for that or anything. He had like a logic set up and, you know, worked it out, worked and worked and worked on it. And then, which I thought was brilliant, so he got together with, I think it was the trio, you know, just to go over the material. And what he heard, of course, the musicians were playing the music how they heard it and felt it, right? So what he did was he took like the hit, especially the hits from the drummer, and he put that with the horns
Wow.
instead of what he had originally written. And I'll tell you, man, he played the other night. He just came out with a record, and it was friggin' great. 4 horns and the trio and him, and I was so proud, you know, of his work ethic, you know, and you know, it was really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so it's great. It's so rewarding when you see that, you know.
Yeah,
It is wonderful, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I remember interviewing John DeVersa, and he said we got into talking about string quartets, and I said, "Oh God, I wish I could write for string quartet." And he said, "You can." He said, "Just do it. Okay, in a month I want to hear it." And I was like, "Oh my God!" But the fact is, you can do it. And I remember when I was at Berkeley, and I had my little cheat sheet about, you know, what range was too high for an instrument, and I used that, and I was writing arrangements. And so there's really no excuses. It's just what do you want to get into, you know, and then how curious are you, and you know, are you going to keep going, are you going to commit, or you know, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah,
it's it can be intimidating once you get started.
yeah,
You know, that's what it takes. It's crossing that line, getting the pencil moving. I know. I on the you know the last that changing the weather CD that I did. I when I got approval for it, I had like 3 books, of music paper where I'd written ideas out over the last 10 years. I get an idea, I write it out. And I'm like, I have like 3 more CDs worth of music there. I just haven't done anything with. And I continue with that. I'll write down ideas all the time. And, there it is. There's the basic footprint of what it can be, and I think we should all be doing that when we can.
Yeah, right. I know. We're, it's like we're waiting for that, I mean, that's what
Well, sometimes I think, like, is it going to make me any money if I'm short on money? I'm like, it's not going to make me any real money.
yeah,
But you never know. I mean, you just don't know. And it's really not about making money. It shouldn't be about making money.
yeah,
And for me, sometimes that's the rub, is if I'm broke, I want to be making some money. And so I'll keep the writing. That's why I had all those ideas, because I just write out ideas. And then it comes to a point where you'll use those ideas.
yeah,
At least they're
yeah.
there.
I have a lot of ideas. I have, I think, 3 folders of ideas. And
You're there.
my problem is I'm not sitting down and like focusing on, here's a question. So you have all these ideas. Let's say you have 30 ideas. And do you look through those 30s and then decide which song is speaking to you? Or do you take one and force yourself to look at that?
Well, on this particular project, I looked through, I found 4 things that I thought could work.
Oh, yeah.
Out of the 4, I used 3.
Mm-hmm.
And, some of the other ideas that I looked at, I'm like, I don't think that's that great. I didn't hear anything that I can do with it.
Did you throw that out?
No, they're still in the book. They'll be there. And there was one other thing that I'd worked on, and it was during the pandemic. It was just 2 notes in each hand.
Hmm.
They would move. I mean, it was really strange how they moved. And I wrote it out. It was like 32 bars or 64 bars. And I'm like, this isn't a tune. This isn't going to ever be. I thought I'd use it for the record. I ended up using it in the string quartet.
Oh,
It worked perfect.
wow.
And it was right on. So you never know where the ideas will go. That's why I keep writing them out. You
Yeah.
look at them, you see, there was one, this is kind of a funny story. I always do a solo tune on my recordings. And I found this melody, and I knew it was like a lullaby. And I thought I'd written it for my son who passed away many years ago. I'd written a bunch of music for him. So I recorded it, and I called it Lost Lullaby. And my wife didn't hear any of the music, and then she heard this song, and she says, "You wrote that for me." When we were dating, I wrote a lullaby for her.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's what this tune was. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh wow.
So like, yeah, and it is a beautiful tune, but it was like, oh, and I didn't even, I got so much, I mean, that was 14 years ago. That's all.
Somewhere in the back there, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, so you don't know.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hilarious actually that I knew I wrote it for someone I cared about, but I didn't know.
That's wild. Yeah. I have a few songs that I've written for people, and it's I think it always works out well, or so far, I can think of, because it's maybe because they're very strong inspiration, and you really know the feeling that you have. And so it's very, strong, as opposed to kind of looking around for melody, you know. And here's the other thing. Do you write, do you sing the melody? Do you hear the melody in your head? Do you play it on the bass? Are you just hunting and pecking? How's your process? Is it various?
My process is very strange. I don't know where it comes from. You know, like this, the chords that I was talking about. I just sat down, and it was feeling very dark. I was, sad, and I wrote these chords, and it's very sad sounding, and it was just, for me, it's a therapeutic just to do it. And other times, like there's a couple other songs that I've written, I just sat down and I started playing a chord and a couple of chords, and then I'm like, oh, this. Then I hear the melody, and I'll write it, and I'll write it all out by hand. And like there's one I wrote about the area I live in, and it's on the new CD. It's called Life in the Cove. I live on a cove that's on a river up the Hackensack, and the tide comes in and out. And I wrote this song called Life in the Cove. And it really was, I was feeling that because I was feeling at the time how lucky I am to live in this environment. I mean, there's trees and the river comes in, and tide comes in and out. And yet I'm like 4 miles from Manhattan. So it's like I was feeling so lucky. And that's what that tune was about. And those kind of things happen. Those kind of things, that's the process. And even with these chords, the melody just appeared. I don't know where. And the second movement of this cello piece is a little more agitated. And I wrote that, and it just came out. I just started writing. I was at the piano, and I'm like, oh, this is nice. Then I put it in the finale, and I listened to it. And this is my best writing. My best writing happens when I'm not really there. For some reason, it just comes out. And that's the whole thing. Like the inner game is letting that creative part of the mind out. How do you release it? And for me, I'm able to do it. But I don't know how I'm able to do it. It just happens. When it happens, that's why I need to be left alone. I told my wife, I'm writing, stay away from me. I don't want to hear the phone. I don't want to hear anything. I'm in this zone. And it can happen, And I don't know. I don't know where it comes from.
I love that. Yeah.
The whole piece, I would love for you to listen to the cello piece because it all came.
I'd love to hear it.
It just happened. I don't know. I started with a bass line in the first movement.
Yeah.
I like this, and it was like an arpeggio that kind of happened, but it had like a pentatonic thing to it, and it just grew. I just started with that, and then I wrote the first version of it, and I have a guy I study composition with. His name is Robert Aldridge, and he's like, "Oh, that's great, but it's like two ideas. What are you going to do? How are you going to piece it together?" And it just happens, And it's the same thing with a lot of the jazz songs. I don't know. I never write anything I rarely write anything that's 4/4 swing.
Oh.
I don't know.
What do you write?
It's eighth note open, kind of. I don't know. Like the changing the weather. That wasn't. I heard that bass line do ba do be dee da ba do be dee da, and I just, that was in that bass line was in one of my sketchbooks.
Oh.
So, and then there's another track called Forward Motion.
Yeah.
Again, it was a bass line. And I had some students come over, and I said, would you guys play all this for me that I wrote? And then I realized that I'd written 3 melodies to the tune. So I have the bass play the first melody. Then the next chorus, the piano plays the other melody I wrote. And the third chorus, saxophone plays the melody I wrote. And on the head out, everybody plays the melody at the same time.
Which melody?
The 3 melodies I wrote for Forward Motion.
So they all play their own melody all together.
Yeah, we all play it together.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm like, okay, that works,
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've written songs that are, because my theory is not, at 100%, far from it, but I know what I like, and usually in my writing I can either come up with a chord or a bass, bass note, and people can kind of lead off of that, in looking at it. But sometimes I'll write these songs. You're kind of inspiring me for this, actually, that are odd. They're kind of empty, there's some structure with the harmony, but it's not typical. And then I'll show it to some player that I think can relate to it, and sometimes they can flesh it out and sometimes they can't, sometimes it's like, no, that's not what I'm hearing.
Well, when I write a melody, a lot of times I will look at the harmony and change the harmony maybe 3 or 4 times to find out what is it I really like.
Yeah.
On that same recording, there's a tune called Always Believe that I labored on that song the longest I've ever labored on any song to come up with what I have 6 versions of it. And I mean, sometimes that happens where you just, and I'm like, this isn't getting better. This is getting worse. I got to stop this and decide what I want to happen. But a lot of times if I write off of the chord changes, I will listen to what the melody sounds like without the chord changes. Okay, and then I'll listen to just the chord changes. And then I'll really analyze what's going on harmonically with the melody and the chord changes. And what can I change? What would be a little different? Would a +5, a major 7 chord with a +5, that will add a little more anxiety to the sound. Do I want that, or do I want it to be more calmer with less chromaticism or less dissonance? Dissonance is a tool that we can use as well as non-dissonance. Like, and then there's rhythmic modulations. How we use that. So those are all tools, but those come later. I'll write the melody and then I'll dissect it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't dissect it. Sometimes it's exactly Life in the Cove. That's exactly how I wrote it and never changed. Other tunes. That's why there's a book full of ideas there, because I don't know
Taylor had wanted to know what your pet peeves are on the bandstand, and what you just said leads me into one of mine, which is, for some reason, when I write, I do use dissonance, and I like it. I mean, I'm actually intending that, and for some reason, piano players generally, every now and then, will change their chord to fit my note in. Oh my God, I can't tell you how annoying that is.
They think that maybe you made a mistake, or that's not correct. And a lot of times, I have to tell people, no, that is what I want.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you got an A flat against the G natural, and I'm like, yeah, but that's the sound I want.
Yeah.
So get used to it. If you've ever looked at Dave Liedman has a book on chromatic improvisation, and in the intro, it's like there's 12 notes, and who's to say what note is wrong? I mean, it's up to you.
I'd like to read that book.
Good book.
Benny Maupin lives here, and for a while before the pandemic, he was playing at least 4 times a year, and it got to where I was sitting there waiting for the dissonant note. I was waiting for it because the way he plays that dissonant note is so dedicated and loving. So it's like that experience of the dissonance with the chord it's perfect. you know?
I mean, the end of last gigs with Jim, Greg Osby was playing alto, and Greg has such a command
Yeah.
over that. He finds those notes, man. I'm like, God, how does he find those? And he makes it work. Even on like we would play, God, one of Billie Holiday's songs? Um, I can't think of the name. And Jim would play so beautifully, and then Greg would come in and solo over it, and it was very dissonant, but every bit as beautiful, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a real way to do it, you know. I mean,
Speaking of, I'm curious, I always teach my students the chromatic scale, and I have them play any chord on the piano and sing each note of the chromatic scale for a long time so you can settle in and feel the vibration and everything, right? And but is there one thing you remember from Liebman's book? I'm curious, like it's basically how to use chromatic scales in improvisation, or
how to think about it. I mean, I haven't gotten too deep into the book.
yeah.
I played a lot with Dave, and I just wanted to get an idea of what was going on in his head. Um, I think the idea is that it's the note. If you land on a dissonant note, it's the next note that makes a difference, or maybe the third note away from that. It's how you get to the dissonant note. What do you do with it? How do you recover from it?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a way to play in the cracks of the harmony, and it just really sets up a vibration, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
when Greg was like, I refer to when Greg was playing with Jim, man. I mean, it was just like, and Jim was Mr. Melodic, and he dug the shit out of what Greg was playing. It was really
Yeah.
great, and you wouldn't think, but the combination of the two really worked great. And I've heard, you know, Greg just play some incredibly beautiful, sometimes very dissonant stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, it's all what you're hearing. What are you hearing in your head? You know,
Yeah.
that's what I always ask everybody. What are you hearing? You know,
Yeah.
melodic minor, you know, Phrygian, what are you hearing? What is it that you're hearing in your head?
Yeah.
That's what makes a difference.
I'd like to hear one more tune before we end off. So I have I Should Care with Peter Bernstein, or I have The Road Ahead from your project. What would you like me to play?
The recording of The Road Ahead. Yeah, let's do The Road Ahead.
Okay. Interesting. That's really nice. So I'm curious, for that song, w- we were talking about that you don't write swing tunes really. So I mean, it almost was a bossa, I think, or I don't know. What do you say like in the beginning when you tell people how to play it?
Eighth note. It's just an eighth note kind of thing. I
Da, 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 da,
like
like
I
that.
should yeah I should say that that was the second time the guys played that tune. That
Uh,
was the last time I decided to play it, record that. Yeah, it's. I mean, like I'm not really playing like a bum 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 bum. I'm
no.
playing conversational kind of eighth note kind of thing. So I really don't know, but everybody understands when I tell them, at least most everybody that I play with here understand what that's supposed to be. This tune was recorded in the 90s for Ram Records. And the reason I re-recorded it is because Ram Records never made it over here.
Oh,
I have it on YouTube, the album. And
yeah.
I should say there's 3 swing tunes on that one. So I don't know. I mean, it's just like I heard that bass line. This is one of those tunes that just came to me. And it's actually the chord changes are almost commercial kind of the way they move.
Oh,
I mean, it's
it's a
kind of
beautiful
corny,
song.
but
It's really beautiful.
I
The
had won a
the
grant.
melody.
The state of Pennsylvania had won a grant back in the 90s to stay home and write for a month, $5,000. And I wrote all the music for this Ram record recording. There's 2 standards on, or 3 standards on it. The rest are originals. And a lot of those tunes, again, like I talk about, they come from somewhere, I don't know where. It just appeared and there it was. And that's one of my favorite tunes from that recording.
It's
You know,
beautiful.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I have some friends here who would like to buy your music, but they don't see you on iTunes. Where can they buy it?
It is on iTunes. The Steeplechase is all on iTunes.
Okay, there
And
you go, Rowan.
if they want to, I have a box full of CDs here. I'm willing to give away really cheap if somebody wants to
Okay, there you
email.
go. So they could probably get to your email through your website, or
My website's been compromised so many times. Yeah, they could try, or they can just do Steve LaSpina at Gmail.
Steve Spina at Gmail. Okay, there you go, everybody. You asked for
Happy to send.
it.
I got a box of them. They ain't going nowhere. You know, I give them away to students sometimes. Um, yeah, I mean that's all on. It's also all on YouTube. The Ram record is on YouTube. I listened to it the other day for the first time in years, and there's some interesting music on there. It's with almost all of my recordings except for 2 have Vic Juris on guitar, who passed away
Oh,
a few years
oh my
ago.
God, he's great.
Yeah, and Billy Drew's on saxophone and Dave Ballou on trumpet. And some Mark Copeland is on a couple of the beginning ones. The Ram record has Jim McNeely
Oh,
on it, and so most everything except for the Ram is on Apple Music and it's on Amazon,
okay.
on Spotify as well. You just
Yeah.
gotta kind of look for it.
All right,
You know,
great. Well,
that's what it is.
Steve, this has been such a fun conversation.
I've
See,
enjoyed it. Well,
aren't we glad that I didn't start with, and so when did you pick up the bass?
yeah, well that's an old story. Um, My dad played the bass. That's why I picked up the bass.
Apparently there.
Yeah, I wanted to play piano. He made me play bass. So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. There you
Italian
go,
people,
man.
you're going to play
You
bass.
know,
Work on it.
my little story is that my dad brought me to some rehearsals when I was like 4 or 5, and the musicians flirted with me, and I thought, yeah, this is good. Music and flirting from guys, yeah. Uh,
I understand that one well too.
Well, yeah, like I said, thank you so much. And actually, I'm going to be interviewing Billy Drews too. I was really, when I went to New York in June, he was sitting in for Dave Liebman because Lieb had COVID. And it was the group with Mark and Joey and Randy Brecker and the bass player.
I don't know which group. Was it? I can see his face. I can't think of his name.
Beard.
Bruce.
Huh?
Yeah. What's
Oh, good. Now a bass player forgets the bass player's name, so that's good.
one of my
Anyway, I
favorites.
saw that band, and Billy Drews was so good, and speaking to him afterwards was so cool. He was so adorable.
He is undoubtedly one of the most unique players ever. And when I put together the original band, I was looking for guys that had really their own sound.
Yeah.
He was number one because, I mean, Billy, he was on all but 2 of my CDs.
Oh, wow.
So like from the very beginning, he was my first pick, and we did a lot of records together on my records. And he always makes my scribbles sound great. You know, he can sight read and play anything, and he's just an incredible player. Yeah, so you'll have a good time.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to it. Well, just for you people who are paying attention, tomorrow I have Julie Kelly on, who's a great jazz singer, dear friend of mine, and it took her 2.5 years to say, okay, I'll be on your show. And then on Wednesday, you probably know Michael Manring.
Wow.
Yeah, he's going to be on. So bass player. Yeah. So that's going to be fun. And then after that, we have some archives and stuff. So, and do I have any gigs Well, I mean, if you're into a beautiful big band of Claire Fisher's music, Sunday, I'll be sitting in on one song with the Brent Fisher big band, which plays Claire Fisher's music, and quite beautiful. And you can find all that information on my website. Other than that, that's in LA. So thank you again so much. It was just a great, great conversation, Steve.
I had a lot of fun. It was always good to talk with you, and I hope we get to perform together again someday. So.
Me too. Me too. All right. Have a good one, man.